So the Roman way of execution at that time was the crucifixion. So the crucifixion on the cross, contrary to what you would see in Hollywood films, was actually very public. Crosses were not so big, not so tall, but actually quite small, almost at the eye level of the people passing by. This was important for them because they wanted people to see this. So always a public place, on the main roads, and so they wanted people to be fearful because they knew if they rebelled against Rome, this is how they can end up as well. And so this was a public way to humiliate and punish the crime. So as the person was going to the place of the crucifixion, they were carrying this horizontal beam of the cross. Not the whole cross. It would be too difficult and too hard to carry the whole thing. The vertical part was already inside, and then the person was nailed to the cross through the wrist.
So all the part they bring up the cross with, it's like Hollywood. They put it on the
Yes, it's Hollywood, yeah. It's for lighting and for show, and it's effective. But here all you have to do is just bend your legs and you're already on the cross because it's almost your size.
Yes.
And so the person was nailed through the wrist and the heel, and so basically they were hanging onto their bones. Great difficulty to breathe, and another thing, because of the pain, they were going through a massive heart attack. But when they had to breathe, they had to do this manually, because from here you can't breathe. So they had to pull up for every single breath. And when they were out of strength, the person's body would give in. They couldn't do it anymore. Slowly the lungs were filled up with liquids up to a point where they would collapse. The person couldn't breathe and they would choke. Later on, the Romans added this middle part. It's called the seat of mercy. So this allowed the person to sit down and breathe easier, but that would extend their death almost by 3 or 4 days, in rare cases up to a week.
Right.
But when you read about the crucifixion of Jesus, it says Jesus was crucified on the day of preparation. So it was Friday, the Sabbath was coming in, and it was preparation for the Passover. And so when they came, it says usually it was the Roman soldiers before the Sabbath, they respected the Jewish law not to work on the Sabbath. So the Sabbath comes in on Friday. So they had to do this very quickly to take them off the cross, but they would have to die first. So they would break their legs. And by breaking their legs, the death came very, very quickly because they lost all of their leg support.
Okay.
And as they came to do that to Jesus, it says that he died early, maybe 4 or 6 hours of his crucifixion. And then they didn't have to do this, so a soldier only pierced his side, but not breaking any of his bones. And there was a prophecy in the Old Testament saying that none of the bones in the body of the Messiah will not be broken. In the book of Exodus, chapter 12, it's talking about the children of Israel going out of Egypt. And so God told them, prepare a Passover lamb. So again, we see the same time, Passover. And he said,
but it was not supposed to be the last dinner. It's not supposed to be one of the East of Passover, and that was before the crucifixion.
Yes.
So you're telling me that the crucifixion was going to be later. The Pesach was going to be later. It was before the crucifixion.
It was the preparation.
All right.
And so it's the same thing. So when they were preparing the Passover lambs, so God told them, prepare the lamb, which is spotless and blameless, and he said, when you eat it, don't break any of the bones, because it was important to keep the sacrifice pure. This is what they did back in Egypt. And then he set them free, and that was a sacrifice for their disobedience and sin. And then John in chapter 19 is saying, this was done back then, so the prophecy about the Messiah may be fulfilled, because just like in the lamb, the Passover lamb, none of the bones in the body of Jesus were not broken. So that was the sacrifice.
All right. And this was a Roman punishment.
Yes.
Yes. To all the ones that want to rebel?
Criminals and rebels.
All right.
And of course, most of them were men, no women.
No woman. Why?
Yeah. Huh?
Women, why not?
Well, you didn't have any rebels who were women. Mainly they were men.
But it was like that. All right.
Yeah, so mainly the men and women. That's